Today we're dissecting the Dunning-Kruger effect, that delightful cognitive glitch where the less you know, the more you think you're a genius. Now, before we get into the forensics of why the internet is basically a massive Mount Stupid, let's have a moment of uncomfortable honesty. I'm standing here sharing a video I built with the help of the very AI tools I'm about to tell you suffer from artificial overconfidence. It's a bit like a guy in a glass house handing out stones, isn't it? The irony is thick, and that's exactly the point. The minute you stop questioning the information in front of you, even if it comes from me, even if it looks polished and professional, you've already lost. If you aren't confused by the layers of what you're seeing right now, you aren't paying attention. So watch this. Learn the theory, but for the love of logic, don't take my word for it. Question the source, question the AI, question the guy behind the microphone. Because if you're not confused, you're not learning. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're conducting a forensic analysis of a cognitive bias, something that's always been a part of human nature, but our digital world has put it on steroids, making it incredibly dangerous. All right, first things first, let's get the clinical definition out of the way. This was first described back in 1999 by David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger. And here's the key thing to get. This isn't about being smart or dumb. It's about a massive blind spot in self-awareness. Put simply, the very skills you need to be good at something are the exact same skills you need to realize you're actually terrible at it. It's a real catch-22.
So to really get how this bias goes wild online, we've got to understand the playground it's in. We need to get a sense of the scale of the environment. Because you'll see, what often looks like this huge wave of public opinion is usually just an illusion, a trick of the light.
Okay, so this is the 99-91 rule of the internet. A full 90% of people online, they're lurkers. They are the silent majority. They're reading, they're watching, they're consuming everything, but they never ever post a thing.
Then you've got the next group, the 9%. We call them the contributors. These are the people who occasionally jump in with a comment or a share. And it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. Their engagement is the gasoline that fuels the algorithm. It's what makes stuff visible.
And that leaves just 1%, the creators. Now, these are the folks generating almost all the new content you see. And yep, that includes the fire hose of misinformation that just spreads like wildfire.
But hang on, this is where the math gets really interesting and kind of scary. See that 1% figure? That's just 1% of active social media users. When you run the numbers and compare that group to the entire population of the planet, you get this, just 0.68%.
Let that sink in for a second. What that means is, the online consensus you see every day, that feeling that everyone is talking about something, it's not real. It's the output of a tiny, microscopic, but incredibly loud minority. It's a distortion field, not a real shift in how most people think.
Okay, so now that we know the scale of the problem, let's look at the mechanism. Let's see exactly how this digital world warps the way we naturally learn things. All right, you know that feeling when you first learn a little bit about a new topic, you watch a couple of YouTube videos and suddenly you feel like an expert? That's what we call the peak of Mount Stupid. It's not really arrogance, it's just you don't know what you don't know yet. You haven't seen the whole iceberg. And yeah, a little bit of knowledge can be a very dangerous thing. But then, if you stick with it, you hit this. The Valley of Despair. This is the absolute most critical part of learning anything. It's that humbling gut punch moment when you realize, oh my God, there is so much I don't know. Recognizing the true scale of your own ignorance, that's not failure. That is the only starting point for real, genuine expertise. And here is the absolute core of the problem. Social media algorithms are basically designed to delete the Valley of Despair from existence. Think about it. These platforms run on engagement, not on accuracy. So they systematically reward the loud, confident certainty you find on Mount Stupid. Outrageous claims get clicks. Careful, nuanced thinking gets scrolled right past. The algorithm basically puts a crown on the confident fool and shoves the cautious expert into a digital grave, making sure no one ever has to take that essential, humbling trip into the valley. So this isn't just about pointless online arguments. This mechanism has jumped from the screen into the real world. And the consequences, well, they're lethal. Let's open up a case file and see what that looks like. So let's look at this case from Minneapolis. You have two completely different stories. The official narrative from authorities: a would-be assassin, a domestic terrorist, approached agents with a weapon. That's their high-confidence story. But then you have the forensic reality, the stuff backed up by bystander video. And it shows a 37-year-old ICU nurse, Alex Pretty, no criminal record, holding a phone. He was tackled, disarmed, and then shot 10 times while he was already motionless on the ground. You have an institution so stuck on its version of reality that it's completely detached from the verifiable facts.
This is a perfect and terrifying example of institutional Dunning-Kruger. It's that same refusal to admit you're wrong, but now it's supercharged with the full power of the state. Because think about it, if they admit he was just a nurse with a phone, their whole high-stakes narrative completely falls apart. So what do? They double down. They stay planted firmly on top of Mount Stupid.
And this is how they get away with it. By controlling the official story, by blocking state investigators, the institution builds a wall around itself. It insulates itself from any corrective feedback. It avoids the valley of despair at all costs. It actively pushes away any evidence that would force it to look in the mirror and confront the actual reality of what happened.
Now, you might think this is just a human problem, a bug in our own wiring. But this pattern of confident incompetence, we're actually building it into the machines. It's being perfectly replicated in the artificial intelligence we're creating.
Take a look at large language models, LLMs for short. They're basically a mirror image of the Dunning-Kruger effect. On one hand, you have human incompetence, where a lack of skill makes it impossible to self-assess. On the other, you have what we can call artificial overconfidence. The AI system has zero real comprehension, but it masks that fact with incredibly fluent, statistically probable language. It simulates expertise perfectly without understanding a single thing.
So, let's be crystal clear. These models are not thinking, not in any way we understand it. It's a process called probabilistic mimicry. They are just incredibly sophisticated pattern matchers. They've digested mountains of text from the internet, and all they're doing is predicting the next most likely word in a sentence. They sound so confident and authoritative because they're mimicking what confident, authoritative text looks like statistically. They're not understanding facts, they're just playing a high-stakes game of Mad Libs.
So just like a person stuck on Mount Stupid, the AI suffers from what we call the dual burden. First, it lacks the actual skill. It has no real comprehension. It's just matching patterns. And second, it lacks metacognition. It has absolutely no ability to look at its own output and say, wait, am I sure about this? The result? You get this dangerous cascade where the machine's misplaced confidence just pours over and reinforces our own human tendency towards overconfidence.
Okay, so if we're vulnerable to this, and the AI we're building is vulnerable to this, what on earth is the solution? Where do we go from here? Well, the answer isn't about cramming more facts into our heads. It's about getting really, really good at knowing what we don't know.
And that brings us right back to the heart of the problem, this dual burden. It's such a vicious cycle. The incompetence itself steals the very tools you would need to notice you're being incompetent. It really is like trying to find your glasses when you can't see without your glasses. It's a paradox.
The antidote, the way out of this trap, is something called metacognitive humility. It's a fancy term for a simple idea, thinking about your own thinking. It's the active, conscious skill of looking at what you know and accurately drawing a line around it, identifying the boundary where your competence ends. It's the superpower of knowing the true shape and size of your own ignorance.
And that brings us to our final and most crucial point. Getting out of the Dunning-Kruger trap, well, it isn't something you do once. It's not a destination you arrive at. It's a continuous loop, a constant recursive process. You have to embrace this idea. If you aren't confused, you aren't learning. That feeling of confusion, that's not a sign you're failing. That's the feeling of your brain working hard, of mapping out a new and complex piece of territory. Honestly, it's one of the few advantages we still have over the machines. That confusion is the signal that you finally stepped off of Mount Stupid and you're actually heading in the right direction.
So what's the takeaway here? The goal is not to throw away new tools like AI or to stop trusting information altogether. The goal is to develop the discipline, the mental muscle, to stay in that uncomfortable valley of despair until you've actually done the work. You need to learn to spot the exact point where the model, whether it's an AI or your own mental model, starts to break down. Because getting out of this mess isn't a one-time fix. It's the constant, difficult, but absolutely essential process of questioning your own certainty.